Hello there, my name is Luciano Oliveira. I am a US attorney with a family in Portugal and a very close personal connection to this country. Today we're going to be talking about the several steps you need to follow to successfully and peacefully acquire a piece of property in Portugal. A heads up, this is not legal advisory. To acquire a property in Portugal, which is going to involve large sums of money, of course you need to retain professional counsel in Portugal to assist you with the acquisition. Just like everywhere else, you're going to see fraud and bad deals in Portugal. And by securing the right professionals, you're going to be able to find the right properties and get what you are paying for. So let's get started with this question. Why do you want to buy a property in Portugal? Answering this question is going to help you define other important components of your purchase, such as your budget, your ideal property, the ideal location, and the features that you consider as a must-have for the property. I know what many of you are thinking. Well, I know exactly what I want, but trust me, if you take just a few minutes to write this down in a piece of paper or in a notepad on your computer, this is going to be helpful later on when you are actually assessing a prospective property and compare against what you had initially thought as the ideal for you. Talking about budget, from the get-go, it's important for you to know that in addition to the property price, there are going to be other costs as well. There is the IMT. The IMT is the tax over property transfer. There is the so-called imposto do selo or stamp tax, which is a tradition coming from the 17th century, believe it or not. There is going to be the recording of the acquisition at the registry, and there are attorney fees and fees to other professionals who may assist you during this process, such as an appraiser or even a property inspector. Additionally, if you're financing the property, there's going to be another imposto do selo or stamp tax over the credit being afforded to you. You're going to have bank fees naturally, and you're also going to need to record the mortgage on top of recording the real estate acquisition. In any scenario, if you're buying this property as a US citizen or a citizen from another country, and if you're sending the funds into Portugal, there are going to be costs related to the currency exchange. Important to note that whenever you're buying from abroad, this is going to be a slightly more complex situation than someone who's going to buy locally. And therefore, there is an increased need for professionals to assist you and make sure, again, that you get what you're paying for. All right, just as the saying says, location, location, location. After you have a budget coming from the prior exercise, then you need to decide on a location. What's driving your decision for a location? Is it a city that you like? Is it a city in which you're going to be able to work as you want? Is it a decision based on a business you're going to set up in this property? Are you going to be close to health services if you are a retiree, for instance? How easy is the access to the airport in case you want to travel back to your country of origin? Would you like to study in a good university? Are there universities in the city? Or if you don't need any of that, maybe you are better off in the countryside, in which property prices are substantially lower than in major cities like Lisbon, Porto, and cities in the Algarve area. What about the type of property? You also need to pick a specific type of property. Different types of properties are going to have naturally different sizes. If you're buying a property in Lisbon, for instance, chances are this is going to be like an older property with smaller dimensions. What about maintenance? How much are you going to spend to keep this property over time? Do you like sunlight, or sunlight is not really a must for you? Do you like a specific type of sunlight, like in the morning, in the afternoon? How is this going to play for the property that you're looking? Do you like a more traditional style, or would you like to have something more contemporary? So these are all questions you need to eventually answer. And again, if you set up the specific things that you're looking for, this is gonna make it easier for you to find the ideal property. Let's say you have your ducks in a row, you know what you're looking for. How do you find what you're looking for? Our recommendation is for you to have a multi-approach to searching for the property. Of course, there are many websites out there that are gonna make it easy for you to find a broad range of properties, and you can find the main ones in the description below. However, you can also rely on realtors in the target area to show you not only what you see in the websites, but also properties that sometimes are not even advertised. If you have an existing relationship in Portugal, you can also use your network to uncover, again, properties that are going to the market but are not in the market yet. Important to stress, you don't need to secure a buyer's realtor from the get-go. Securing a buyer's realtor from the get-go may reduce the range of properties that you're gonna be able to visit. All right, now if you find a property, it's time for you to visit the property. I cannot emphasize that enough. You should visit the property probably more than once. Usually when you visit for the first time, you are overwhelmed with the features, with the location. It's just impossible for someone to learn about everything at the first go. In addition to going potentially multiple times to a property that you are seriously considering for an offer, you can also record your visit so you can see this recording later on. When you visit the property, how does this property meet your requirements that you wrote at the beginning of this journey? In addition to this more objective analysis, how do you feel about the property? Do you feel good? Do you feel like that's the one? Now, all right, let's say if the property is checking all the boxes, just try not to get too attached to it, because like we said at the beginning, not every property is appropriate for you to purchase. Particularly as a foreign citizen, you don't want to buy a property with entanglements, because entanglements would be easier to be troubleshot by someone local, but not necessarily by someone who's a foreign citizen. Okay, after you found a property and you're considering an offer, our approach is to do some pre-due diligence even before the offer. What's the reason for that? You don't want to make an offer, you don't want to get to the contracting stage for a property that is not going to be feasible for you to buy. Now, if it is pre-due diligence shows that the property is actually conveyable and there are nothing serious about the sellers and the property, then yes, you can move it to the offer stage. The offer stage is going to have the main components of what's going to be the purchase agreement later on. More specifically, how much the property is going to be sold for, if there's going to be a finance, and if you have any deal breaker clauses. This should be added, of course, to your offer. An example of a deal breaker clause is when you are buying the property with everything inside. If this is a must for you, like you're gonna meet the seller's asked price, but as a condition you wanna have all the furniture along with the house, that clause should be added to your offer. Now, there is no need for a formal acceptance of the offer. Usually, after the seller is satisfied with the offer or both parties have agreed on the basic terms, then it is time for a purchase agreement to be drafted. The purchase agreement in Portugal is called CPCV, which stands for a promise to buy and sell. And why does it say a promise? Because at this moment it's just a promise. This document is not a legal conveyance. And in this document, not only the main terms discussed in the offer stage, but also a more detailed agreement between the parties is going to be reached. It's very common for this purchase agreement to have several versions that are going to evolve as buyer and seller negotiate the terms. Very important, you should have an attorney with you along the way, making sure that the terms are not only fair, but they are feasible as well. Once a final version is reached, seller and buyer are gonna sign the agreement, and then this is gonna become enforceable. After the signature takes place, you're gonna need to pay the sinal. And remember that the sinal is gonna be paid to the seller. It's not gonna go to an escrow, it's gonna go to the seller's pocket. And this is very traditional in the Portuguese market, and it's very common for our clients to say, well, I don't feel comfortable, I would like to pay to an escrow. There is no such a thing. That's usually a deal breaker, and so in every transaction that we handle, the sinal is going to be paid to the seller. What you can do to reduce the risks, if you're concerned, is to have a sinal that's not going to be a substantial percentage of the total amount. There is no standard amount for you to pay, but traditionally in our transactions, the sinal is going to range between 0%, 5%, and 10%. We usually shy away from sellers demanding 20% sinal. So you sign the purchase agreement, you pay the sinal, and now what? Usually between signing the purchase agreement and paying the sinal and closing, there is a time window between 60 to 90 days. During this time window, if there is finance involved, then the finance paperwork is going to be handled. Usually the bank is going to send someone to do an appraisal. There is some recording going on with the banks. And after you get the final approval, then the transaction is going to flow better towards a closing. A few other things are going to happen, such as a letter must be sent to a tenant if there is a tenant in the property already, and the tenant is going to have a preference to buy the property. I know it may be confusing. If you are buying the property, how can you tell someone else that they have a preference to buy? Again, this is traditional in the Portuguese market, and 9 times out of 10, the tenant is not interested in buying the property. So this is going to be more of a formality than an actual offer to the tenant. Interesting to note, the preference is not only for the tenant, but in some historical or specific properties, there is also a right of preference to the municipality or other public departments. So to give a notice to the municipality and to these public departments, you need to publish an ad. Usually the cost for publishing this ad is not much, and either the realtor or the attorney assisting you, they are going to help you place the ad. After things are evolving well, you're also gonna pick a final closing date. When moving to the closing date, usually a couple of weeks before, you're gonna be paying most taxes and fees. Remember, the taxes such as the IMT, which is the tax over a property transfer, and the so-called stamp tax. Remember, you also need to secure the certificates of clearance for the closing. The certificates of clearance are going to include at least the so-called license of use, or if there is no license of use required, there should be a certificate for that as well. There should be the housing technical profile, which is something that started back in 2004. There is also the declaration of the homeowners association, meaning that the seller doesn't owe monies to the HOA, and there should be a proof that the sinal was paid as well as per the contract. All right, now we are arriving at the closing. So the closing is going to take place either at a notary or either at a law firm. In Portugal, there is an option for the closing to happen in these 2 ways, and there is also the Casa Pronta approach, which is a new way of closing, which is not really traditional whenever there is a foreign citizen as a buyer. So on the closing day, the officer, either the notary or the attorney, this person is going to take the identification, the IDs for the parties. There's going to be a review of the property data to make sure that the property being conveyed matches what people expect it to be. There's going to be a reading of the main closing paper, which in Portuguese is called escritura. There's going to be a confirmation that the applicable taxes and fees, they were all paid. And then there is a signing of this contract, which again, it's called escritura. To make sure this is clear, this contract is not the same one that you signed at the beginning. The one that you signed at the beginning was the promise, and this one is the real conveyance. So let's keep calling it escritura. After the signature, then there is the payment of the balance and delivery of the keys. After the escritura took place, the transaction is going to be recorded in a specific type of registry. The name of this registry is Conservatória do Registro Predial. This is somewhat similar to the county real estate records that you have in the United States. In Portugal, there is no deed per se, but you can still issue a certificate at this registry, which is going to show who's the owner of record. And at the final of this journey, you should be able to see your name as the owner of record. I hope you liked this content. Don't forget to download our ebook, The 7 Most Common Mistakes Made by Foreign Citizens When Buying Real Estate in Portugal. Let me know what you think about this process in the comment section below, and see you in our next video.